Alright you guys, so today I want to do a behind the scenes for episode 75. Now if you haven't already seen it, I highly suggest you check out the original Dwarf video, episode 50, as well as the behind the scenes that accompanied it, episode 51, because for that behind the scenes we really went into detail on the entire process of going from recording to adding the Dwarf back into that footage. With that said, today we're going to talk about the differences between episode 50 and 75 and the different approach we may have taken. Alright, so just like the last behind the scenes, let's jump right in and talk about the recording process. Now, this time around, instead of recording with QuickTime Player, we use ScreenFlow. This allowed us to record in full screen without experiencing any of the flickering issues that often occur when you try to record Minecraft with other programs on a Mac. Recording episode 75 was a bit different than episode 50 because there wasn't as much interaction with the Dwarf. There was, however, a bit of interaction with the dragons, so that's going to be our main focus on this part of the behind the scenes. Really, we could break down the prep work of this video into just two parts, the dragon egg breaking and the dragons appearing. Breaking the dragon egg was pretty simple. I had Nick stand behind the pillar in creative mode while holding shift, and when I gave him the cue, he punched the dragon egg. In order to get the exact amount of control that we wanted, I actually used two different worlds for this video, one with dragons and one without. While recording the footage, I made sure to run up to the end portal and lift my mouse off of the mouse pad so that I wouldn't look anywhere. Then, after a couple seconds of recording, I quit the game and I moved the player file over to the other world that had the dragons in it. This allowed me to log back in and still be facing the exact direction that I logged out at so that I could then seamlessly stitch both pieces of the recording together and I didn't have to have the dragons in the scene the whole time or spawn them on command. Now normally in Minecraft, when you're in an area where the Wither or an Ender Dragon exists, there's a health bar at the top of the screen that reads the boss's name. In order to work around this, we just created a resource pack and removed the Ender Dragon's health bar, as well as the font from the game, so that there wasn't any text on screen. Then after everything was recorded, we just added the text back in later. And really, in the end, that's all we had to do for the recording process. Moving on to Match Mover, this is where the major differences start to come in. You see, for episode 50, I literally spent every day for over a month tracking all day in order to get the camera exported into Maya so that I could add the Dwarf back into the footage. For episode 75, we planned out my movements in such a way that we were actually able to finish recording in the evening and I was actually done with the tracking by the next morning. I'm very happy to say that the tracking process ended up being the easiest part of this episode. Just like with episode 50, once we got the footage tracked, we brought the camera into Maya. Something we never actually expected to be a problem was that the Dwarf ended up blending into the background. We had to do several different types of animations before we found something that we really felt drew your attention enough that you wouldn't have a hard time finding the Dwarf once he appeared on screen. We used the same technique for the shadows as we did in episode 50, but because we're looking up at the Dwarf, we actually only had one single frame in the whole project where his shadow showed up. So once the renders were done, we took him into After Effects. We used After Effects for a lot of the same things that we initially did in episode 50. However, since the second half of the recording didn't have any text, it was actually even easier to customize things like the death message. Since we were done masking and adding text back into the file, we were basically all set and all we had to do was add the sound. And there you have it, episode 75. Alright guys, well thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope you've learned something and look forward to seeing more of the Dwarf Lord in the future. Alright, take it easy.